Oh my goodness, and I forgot. Okay, I get to introduce the most incredible speaker. So Toneille Bent is somebody who is so near and dear to my heart. She is an incredible speaker. I please extend the warmest welcome. You are so lucky that you get to hear from the Toneille Bent. Please welcome Toneille. No. Here, let me help you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, friend. Appreciate you. Oh, I love you.
Good evening, everybody. I might use my teacher voice. Good evening. I'm so glad to have the opportunity to be with you all this evening.
I was going to say, if you want to click it one more time for your background. Just the clicker. Yep, that one. The next one. The next one.
You know what? Guess what? So this is me. I have no additional slides. I'm going to tell you that I was very deliberate because slide decks stress me out. So you're going to get to just listen to me for a moment. I am honored to be here. I want to thank Crystal. I want to thank Atlas. I want to say to you that when you reached out to me, you just don't know how much of an honor it is to be here. And for you to put this together, kudos to you. Thank you. So Dr. Latta and I, it's just always love, right? We met a few months ago, and from that time, or maybe, oh no, it's over a year now. From that time, we have gotten to collaborate in various ways, including with the YWCA Pinnacle Awards, and just in general, forging a connection to me that speaks to sisterhood and allyship. She knows how much she means to me. In particular, there was an instance when she saw me and took a step to make sure that I was seen and heard. And I just want to say publicly to you how much that still means to me. So thank you. Also, I've got to acknowledge my greatest example of motherhood, grace, stoicism, how I learned to be who I am, my mommy, Jennifer Bent. I love that she came with me this evening. I got to tell you that we are immigrants, and I'll get to some of our story, right? But my mother looked at my father in 1977, 78 and said, we've got to leave our homeland. Things are getting tough here. Things are getting dangerous here. And I can see the writing on the wall. And she advocated for her children and her husband and herself and made a tough decision to say, we've got to leave the home we know. Now, my dad had come here to the States and gone to college in the 60s, late 60s, 70s, knew Tulsa, and said, okay, we will make a move to Tulsa. So my dad came ahead, and he set up shop, right? Got to work, set up the house. And my mother traveled from Jamaica with 2 little children. I was 3, my brother was 9 months. And I looked at her the other day. We went to Jamaica for my uncle's funeral, and I said on the plane, you really flew from Jamaica? And I've asked her this before, to Tulsa with the 2 of us by yourself. How did you do it? She said, you know what? I just did it. I don't really know how, but I just did it. And I just want to say to you that you know how much I adore you and love you. I admire you and respect you in ways you don't even know. Every sacrifice you made going into the workplace as a manager, a Black woman, an immigrant in the 80s, and going through all types of challenge that I don't know fully. You worked odd hours, nights, mornings, weekends, holidays, and you still mothered my brother and I, and were an amazing and are an amazing partner to Daddy. And I just thank you. I love you. So Dr. Latta gave us amazing data. I am not a statistician, okay? I am more the woo-woo, life coachy, let's talk existential kind of conversations person. And I too was a school teacher, but I now have the opportunity to work for an amazing organization, a nonprofit in Tulsa. Some of my colleagues were tabling on the other side and are here. I want to say that tonight I'm speaking as Toneille, the individual. I'm not speaking for the agency. However, I am so thankful that I have the opportunity to work for an agency that does focus and center equity. So my talk tonight is about equity in some broad ways, some provocative ways, and some transparent ways. Okay, so I hope you all can rock with me a little bit on that, because I'm going to pull no punches in some spots, and I was told that that's all right. So here we go. Right. So it's Women's History Month. So happy Women's History Month. First, I wore my ambitious shirt tonight, okay, because I am. And I am thrilled to stand here tonight for women, for pay equity, for equity overall. And for every DEI hire out there, we darn well earned it. There are children in the building, so I won't say it another way, but we darn well earned it, and my mama's here too. So before I get to DEI being the new CRT, if you remember that, the newest cuss word in the cultural and political lexicon, if you will, right? Just a few notes. I saw a really great quote this week that I want to share as we continue to honor Women's History Month, and as you know, some strive to erase us as women. Some strive to take away our rights as women. Here's the quote: "A woman's self-approval is a quiet revolution that shakes the foundation of the patriarchy." A woman's self-approval. So we need to be able to approve of ourselves first. So may we continue to shake that foundation to its core, starting with our own approval of ourselves. Women leaders here and internationally, right, continue to step up, and speak out, and not back down, and to lead the charge to challenge bullying and general bad business and patriarchy. I don't know if you remember this song. Anybody who's a Gen Xer might. There was a song in the 80s by Aretha Franklin and Annie Lennox of the Eurythmics, and it's "Sisters are doing it for themselves." We are. Second, I just want to say my positionality is that of a cisgender, heterosexual, Gen Xer, Black immigrant woman. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. So as I'm speaking, please understand that that's where I am and how I position and who I identify as in the world. So it colors everything in my perspective. I'm also a former middle school Spanish teacher. And the adage goes, once a teacher, always a teacher. So I've got a little quiz, but I'm not going to grade you. So let's just do this real quick and easy. It's going to be like a game. So it's when I say, you say. All right, so let's practice. When I say a word, I want you to just respond. Just shout it out. So when I say Tulsa, what do you say? Oklahoma. Anything else? Home. Tulsa. Golden Driller, Route 66, TU. All right. Awesome. Home. Oklahoma. Next, let's try it again. When I say equality, you say? Now. Gender. Women. When I say equity, you say? Matters. So why did I have us do that, right? Words matter. Words matter. And a lot of times words are tossed around and people don't know what they mean. So I want to establish a baseline, because when words are misunderstood, misappropriated, misused, abused, and stolen, right? They get weaponized. And baseline understanding is key. If we don't understand our basement, we can't build. So it's my notion that we can't get to true and beneficial equality, because everything equal ain't great, right, all the time. Beneficial equality if we can't establish equity. We don't just want equality, we want it to be beneficial. We want it to be what we deserve, what humanity deserves. Not every water fountain was the same quality water fountain during the separate but distinctly unequal segregation era, for example. Not every school was resourced the same during that era, right? So we've got to be careful about the notions of what are equal in our society. So I may use a lot of bad words, right? Words that are misappropriated, twisted, misunderstood, and misapplied, and I would argue deliberately used to cause harm. Words and acronyms like woke, CRT, DEI, and a whole watch list of other words that I think we need to hold on to and stand on. There is a watch list that's circulating right now, right, in federally funded research circles. And I'm going to just share some of the words, which is too many to name here, but here are some of the words. Historically, female, pregnant person, biological, Black, equity, identity, cultural heritage, disability, clean energy, mental health, victims, Native American, and the list goes on. And I will tell you what's missing from that list because I looked, and I've looked at several iterations of the list. There are 3 words I have not seen yet. Any guesses? Male, white, man. None of those 3 have appeared on the lists. And I've looked up and down, left and right, wondering. So, quick definitions, right? Equity is giving people what they need to thrive, succeed, and have access. That's one. You want to Google me, go to the Googles and Google the definition and see if I'm right, right? This is about supporting people with their needs, not always their wants. And when you call DEI by its, what black folk would say is its government name, diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you say it out, then I hope that it seems harder for some folks to disdain it. And I hope that when you're able to explain what things mean, it challenges detractors, right? Ask some of them to say those words fully. So diversity, equity, and inclusion right now are held up as being discriminatory against men, against people who are not people of color, and that it is, in my estimation, something that's being misappropriated, and DEI is being dismantled because I think it was working too well in offering access and visibility to people that the majority would aim to hold down. But beyond this, I say DEI is for all. That's the piece that a lot of people detracting don't grasp, that it is not just for a certain set of people. But I'll get to that later. So my talk, Equity Beyond the Buzz, Equity Matters Beyond the Buzz, is because equity has become a buzzword. It has become something to shoot political bullets at. And it is something that villainizes what I say are endeavors to afford the unseen visibility, endeavors to give the unheard voice, and to give the underserved access. That's what equity to me is about. So when legitimate language becomes buzzy, first of all, that annoys me. Second of all, I think it's time to go harder. I think that when liberatory concepts are distorted and colonized, it's time to dig in. And equity isn't about a Robin Hood notion of robbing the rich to give to the poor, okay? It's about giving people, poor and otherwise, persons who are underserved and otherwise, what they need to thrive and be empowered, and that includes people with privilege. So the first example that I had of equity was in my house. So this was when my mommy and daddy taught me my lessons in equity that they didn't know they were teaching me, and really that didn't land for me until very recently. So I have a brother, like this week. I have a brother, and we are Gen Xers, I mentioned that. I turned 50 in December, so that will give you a little bit of my age. My brother is 47. So back in the day, thank you. 50 is a great place to be, if y'all are wondering. So my parents taught me my first lessons in equity, but I was too busy pouting to understand that that was what was happening. So my brother developed severe asthma when he was 4. And what that meant was sleepless nights, breathing treatments, hospital runs, emergency rooms, doctor's appointments, prayers and concern, fear, stress and strain that my mom and dad walk through with their child, right? I, on the other hand, was the child in the corner with her books, her music, her dolls, quietly entertaining myself, and healthy. My brother also became an avid soccer player at 5. So what did that mean? That they had to invest in tournaments and games and uniforms and being present for him at those events. I was neither in performing arts nor sports. They tried it. Now my uniform stayed white and my hair stayed in place. I would trot off the field. Is my hair okay, mommy? That was how invested I was in soccer at the time. Still that way. So I was lower maintenance, right? And I heard someone say this. Somebody said, parents, sometimes children will have the same parents raised in the same home. How do they turn out so differently? It's the same parents. Brilliantly, somebody said, no, they're not the same parents. They have to be different for each child. And my parents had to be different for each of us. And so my notion, until I grew up and understood better, was that my brother was my folks' favorite and that he got special treatment. We've talked about this, Mom. You're not surprised? So literally, here's the thing. He did get special treatment because he needed it. If they had treated him the way that they treated me and left him in the corner, I'll pause there. He needed focused care that I didn't require. I wanted equal treatment, right? But I didn't understand that I was receiving equitable treatment, and I do know that we received equal love. You see the difference there, right? My brother was born and had a condition that was different than I, and affinities that were different than I, but they loved us equally. So my parents' focus on me was not any less, and they didn't neglect me. And I got everything I needed from them and still do. So diversity is, y'all, and there's not a thing that anyone can do about that. Even if there are attempts to wipe it out, to eliminate, edge out, and remove those who fit into diverse identities, diversity is going to endure. So if you lined up 10 5'2", short-haired, light-skinned Jamaican women, immigrant women, who had been school teachers, every single one of us would have uniquenesses, even in that group that seems to be heterogeneous, or homogenous, I'm sorry. So I might be preaching to a choir, right? If I am, go help the tone deaf folk. Okay, help them with their understanding. Inclusion is important for a thriving society, and equity is a source of a thriving society. So, I don't know, what are they so afraid of? One of my favorite scholars and sages is the late Brazilian scholar, Paulo Freire. Anybody heard of Pedagogy of the Oppressed? And Freire was a scholar who worked using literacy as a liberatory practice in Brazil with the poor. One of his quotes is, "To glorify democracy and to silence the people is a farce. To discourse on humanism and negate people is a lie." So we can't have a veneer of respectability and common sense, right? And not be supportive of humanity. We just cannot. That's the farce that Freire spoke of. And so at the foundation of what I think is a war on equity is fear. There is greed, there's power, and I'm really hard pressed to think that those fighting it don't really know the merit of it. They know the merit of it, and that's the fight. So what I would encourage, right, is that as we go about our lives, as we go about our professions, as we are in community with each other, that we keep empathy central, that we keep humanity central. Dr. Latta gave good information, great information about the fact that a child care gap is not just a woman's, female's, mother's problem. That's problematic for the children, the partner, society, right? How can we not be concerned with our neighbor and their needs? How can we not approach this holistically and collectively? So another point of the equity conversation became really, really clear for me when I started teaching in 2005. I found my way to teaching as a second career. What I endeavored to do was be a jet set lawyer. I got a Spanish degree to be a lawyer with that. And I enrolled in TU Law and started full-time, quit my job from Hilti Fasteners, which had the most beautiful culture at the time in the 90s. And I did a year full-time. I had done a semester and a half. 9/11 happened the year that I was enrolled full-time. And ultimately, I left because it was not for me. But along the way, I had started teaching part-time at TCC and fell in love with the classroom. It took me a while, but in 2005, I went into teaching at KIPP Tulsa College Preparatory. I taught at Monroe as well, out north, and what I heard and saw in the conversation was education equity, education reform, no child left behind, right? Culturally responsive and relevant teaching. I went to school in Broken Arrow. None of that was the conversation. I feel like I had a great education. But what I saw was that my kids, my babies, didn't have the same access that I had just not even thought about having. my brother and I, my parents and I, not having to think too hard about quality education for their kids once they got us to a place that they were satisfied with, right? In public school, in Broken Arrow. And so that really kind of sparked my passion for this work around equity. And I think that the sad part for me is that those conversations were 20 years ago, and what's happening now? We're still having those conversations. So there's work to do. Diversity, equity, and inclusion touching all of us. A few examples of this quickly. Wheelchair ramps, individualized education plans and IEPs for students, lactation rooms for nursing moms, parental leave, right? For not just birthing mothers or parents, but for fathers, for non-birthing partners, and longer, right? Parental leave, even than just 6 weeks. Veteran affairs that are now facing some phase outs and cuts. Mental health care. Seatbelt extenders on planes. Those are all examples of how diversity, equity, inclusion touch our lives and show up in our world. But we don't hear that, right? We have seen it limited to one context, or maybe two. Persons of color and the LGBTQIA plus community potentially is where we hear it the most, okay? These policies have not just been helpful to minoritized folks, but they have been put in a context that that is who they are for, and so they're being challenged. And that includes women. How am I on time? I want to move quick. Okay, thank you. So the first time that I ever heard the phrase, "do it like a mediocre white man," I was appalled. I was stunned. No, really, this is real. I was stunned because it was a white man in leadership saying it to me. And I was like, did you know what you just said to me? And he was using it to encourage me to go great guns for what I wanted. Stick with me. He was encouraging me to negotiate my salary because he was looking to give me a salary increase and wanted me to advocate for myself, to believe in myself. We had conversations about imposter syndrome, which I wasn't feeling. That wasn't what was going on. And he told me he was a feminist. He was a man telling me he was a feminist and really about women's issues and women's causes. And he himself is a dad of 2 girls, right? So it was a lot of food for thought. But that phrase that he used and the encouragement he gave me, I'm going to tell you that I haven't stopped negotiating yet. And I appreciated his guidance. And I want to say that in my career, I'm going to say something that is not everybody's typical experience. A lot of men have opened a lot of doors for me from my first job at the movies serving popcorn to today and believed in me. And why do I say that? I say that because that is an example of being able to work across lines of difference. That is being able to be truly a comrade, an ally, to support someone who's different from you. And these men had all points of identity, okay? So I think that it is very possible for us to be in community across lines of difference and truly be one another's comrades. As I lead, I'm an executive vice president now. Sometimes I don't believe that because if I had made the slide deck, you'd see a picture of me as a little girl in pigtails, really unsure where she fit. I'm in awe of where my life has taken me, and never will I stop bringing along others like me and just bringing along others who need the investment that I can make because it's been made in me. And I'm not doing it like a mediocre white man, but I am doing it like the superiorly qualified Black woman that I am. So I could give you a primer in matters of inequity in America, but my main endeavor is to say this to you. Do not let anyone convince you that empathy is weak and equity is divisive. Do not let anyone tell you that words on paper outweigh the work, the blood, the sweat, tears, and intentionality that it takes to change systems of harm and violence. We're in a battle right now. I am convinced, though, that if we can remain clear that at the center of it all are humanity and empathy. We can remain inspired in the battle. There is just one other thing, and then I'll close. Y'all ever been in church and the pastor says, before I close, and then it's 3 closes? I got about 2 more. So I grew up in BA, as I said, in the 80s and 90s. And at the time, at no time in our time in Broken Arrow were there ever any other black families on our street. Okay. And I can remember distinctly the second home my parents bought, which was the one we grew up in. They didn't talk to us that first summer. There was one lady, Mrs. Steele, who brought cookies over and some kids and said hello. And I noticed that, right? There were kids our age, and it took a long time for them to kind of warm up and cross their boundaries and get to know us. And I never had any teachers that looked like me until I went to college, like I said. And I spent my childhood explaining my fair skin, my hair, why I spoke like I did, my culture, my heritage, to people both black and white, right? And I was always the only of me in any given class. Maybe not the grade, but my classes, yes. But I watched my mom and dad, and I watched them forming community and coalition with this really amazing and beautiful contingent of friends that they had from all nationalities, walks of life, belief systems. And the way that that formed was in part because of a cricket team that my father started in 1983. And that endeavor became a civic, social, physical endeavor, cultural endeavor, a political endeavor even. And it was rich to see. We'd go to their homes, they'd come to ours, and embracing difference was never hard. It was always reality for us. And my parents invited friends into the home, family into the home, cared for them, fed them, gave them a place that was safe, and helped people find their footing often. Our home was a hub, not to mention the amazing house parties they used to throw. And yet, even as our home was this amazing hub, my mom and dad encouraged us to get into the world that was around us, this American culture and world. They never told us that America was a bad place to be. And they taught us to challenge any kind of imposition on our person, our identities, to reject any disrespect or bias. And they taught us that our culture still was beautiful. So as we opened our doors, right, and these people on the block saw more of us, they started to peek out from their curtains and come over and have a plate of food, and their kids would play with us. And they became engaged and enriched. And it was a delight to be able to form community across lines of difference like that. So we and our neighbors did something that Brian Stevenson, the author of Just Mercy, who leads the Equal Justice Initiative, something that he called getting proximate. We had regular engagement with our neighbors and they with us, and our friends and they with us. And it's not only about being proximate as in next to, but it's about deep engagement and relationships, I like to call them, right? With people different from you. That is the richest type of education that I know, and I'm a 6th-year doctoral student. It's the richest kind of education that I've ever had. And I wouldn't trade that experience of immersion in difference for anything. And some days, yes, were hard, right? Being the only, trying to explain, trying to educate, even as a 6-year-old little girl. But I feel like at some point I achieved mastery in that. But today, I think I lost some of that mastery, just a moment of vulnerability. And I struggle with the way we are today. And it's always been that way, but I feel it differently. I grieve a lot with the current state of affairs because I want to fix it. And I have to dig deep for hope that this too will pass. I have to dig deep into the belief that we can get not just back to a feigned notion of unity and justice for all, but truly to be intentional and to see diversity, equity, and inclusion as benefits. So, diversity, equity, inclusion for me were never initiatives, flashes in the pan. They are the way that I know to create and be part of a thriving and good world. And so if nothing else that I've said to you today lands, hold this. Equity plus humanity. Empathy plus humanity equals equity. Empathy plus humanity equals equity. I don't know if my math is right, but that's my equation. Empathy is not weakness. It is one of the strongest skills besides vulnerability that I know, and it opens doors as it opens souls. So let's look at our neighbors and truly see them. Let's lean in and listen to the heart of their matters and share ours. Let us speak truth to power and keep clear that humanity is all that matters. That, as the phrase goes, Ubuntu I am because you are. My humanity is tied to yours. Try, y'all, and don't let the circumstances that may confound you harden your hearts. Let them harden your resolve to do and be different, to do and be good. It's so necessary, and so are you all. Thank you.
Whoa, you guys, you see why I invited these ladies, right? Yes. So thank you guys so much. We are going to head back across to the Annex campus. We have charcuterie and some drinks over there. Feel free to visit the resource tables. We about till 7 o'clock. You know, if you get in a real great conversation, feel free to hang out longer. We're not going to kick anybody out, but let's go. Let's jump.